I've noticed over the last week or so that a ton of amazing digital Circus AUs have been popping up on my homepage, specifically the comic dubs. And one that stood out for me is called the Aftershow, created by Deuces and Munchie Moves, I believe how you said her name, while the comic dub I watched is by Lily Comics Dubs VA here on YouTube. And I have to say that they did an amazing job with the voice acting. Now, this AU really caught my attention because it doesn't deal with like a crazy infection or some horrific monsters, but rather just two people trying to piece their lives back together after going through a kind of trauma that most people won't be able to relate to unless they were also in that digital circus. Now, this AU starts off with Pomni having a flashback to her final moments inside of the digital world. And we see that she screams to Kinger, telling him that he has to come with them. But before we can actually see how he responds, a nurse from the real world calls out to her, breaking her out of this memory. The first thing that I noticed is that Pomni's real name is Christine Moore, and she's also really tiny. When looking at the curator's height chart, we see that Pomni is only 4'11", or aka around 150 centimeters. Now, after getting her bearings, she follows the nurse into the room, and apparently her parents set up this check to make sure Pomni is okay, which makes sense considering that she was legally declared missing for years. And her parents likely just want to make sure that nothing bad happened to her body while she was away, especially since she has very few memories of that time period. The nurses asked her a few simple questions, but the thing that stood out to me here is the fact that Pomni is 120 pounds and has been that way her entire adult life, meaning before she was trapped in a circus, during her time in the circus, and when she got out. And this tells us that even while she was in the VR, whoever placed her there either had a way to feed them while they were inside, or they like completely froze their bodies like they were in some kind of stasis. Because as she points out, she hadn't eaten in months, and by all accounts, she should have been skin and bones by the time she was released. In the next panel, we see Pomni looking at her phone, and she's searching up any information that she can find about the digital circus, hoping that she can find her friends, although she seems to be very certain that Kinger didn't make it out. We learn that he managed to access the admin privileges and was able to use some type of code to not only lock away Kane, but to build an escape route for the rest of the survivors. But it seems like he had to stay behind if he wanted to ensure everyone else could escape, essentially sacrificing himself to make sure that his friends were able to go back and live a normal life. And based on this panel here, we can tell that that fact really tears Pomni up, but I'm happy to see that she vows to find the rest of her friends so that they can actually honor him together. Now, after the doctor appointment, we see Pomni making her way back to her car, and she gives her mom a call just to put her mind at ease. But while looking at her phone, she ends up bumping into this tall guy, dropping her phone and shattering the screen. And as she starts to get into it with this guy, telling him to watch where he's going, he responds by saying that only one of them wasn't paying attention, and he ends the sentence by calling her short stack. And while the insult itself isn't familiar, Pomni recognizes the snark and, more importantly, the voice. So wanting to see if her theory was correct, Pomni asks the stranger, "How do you feel about jesters?" And for a moment, the man just stares at her, and she begins to think that she may have made a mistake. But then he responds, saying that they're a disaster, totally unstable, pretty short too. "How do you feel about rabbits?" And this is when Pomni knows for sure that she's found Jax. And I have to say that I really like his design. The snake bites are a nice touch and just kind of fit his aesthetic. We can also see that he's about 6'4" or 194 centimeters, and he has a ton of tattoos on his body. The two that caught my attention were the fairy tales one first, because this is supposed to be like a comfort anime for him, which I can definitely relate to. And the second tattoo that really stands out is this king chess piece on his back, which he got in memory of Kinger. I really appreciate that he genuinely seems to be grateful for the sacrifice that Kinger made for them. And I also think it's clear that Kinger is definitely the MVP of this AU. Can we get a Kinger is the GOAT down in the comments, please? Now in chapter 2, we see that Pomni is struggling with her emotions for a moment. A part of her wants to hug Jax, but a stronger part of her just wanted to take a look at him. Because if she's being honest with herself, she thinks he looks good. After a brief silence, the two of them exchange some small talk where Pomni seems to have her life together with a new apartment, a job, and she was even able to get her old car back. Something that caught my attention is how Jax looks truly happy for her while she's speaking, but when she asks him how his life is going, he pretty much becomes avoidant, and for whatever reason, he's not able to maintain eye contact with her. And this gives off the impression that life may not be going great for him. Sensing the tension, Pomni pushes past the moment and introduces herself, and we see Jax smile in return, grips her hand, and reveals that his name is Felix, which really seems to fit him. The two then begin to joke, talking about how odd it is meeting each other all over again, until Jax asks where the two of them are heading off to. And I love how Pomni just says, "I guess he's coming with me now." But ultimately, I think this just goes to show how lonely both of them have been, and they're probably craving the company of people who actually understand what they went through. Chapter 3 begins with Pomni telling Jax that she planned to go home, right on the couch, and order a pizza, and he seems to be keen on joining her. I find it kind of funny that when they get to Pomni's car, Jax starts to freak out as if it's a Ferrari or something, but it's actually just a 2015 Honda Civic. But I guess when you consider that this car was probably really popular around the time that he got sucked into the digital world, it kind of makes sense that he would be kind of impressed that she has it. But it's also kind of sad because it highlights how much of his life he's lost, considering that this comic probably takes place in like 2024 or 2025, I believe. And this basically means that he's been trapped or locked away for about 10 years. This may also explain why he seems to be having a harder time adjusting to normal life than Pomni is, as someone who spent significantly less time in the digital world. But I love how the two of them are able to just joke about this situation, with Jack saying that he's basically like riding around in the Batmobile, and also asking if they can play Uptown Funk, which was also a really popular song in 2015. We also see that when Pomni hands him her phone so that he can find a song, he has no idea how to work the new tech, having to learn how to even turn the phone on. Again, doing a good job of showing us how he is likely struggling back in normal society and why he was lucky to have found Pomni when he did. The next chapter digs into this a little bit more. We see that after he looks through the playlist, he begins to speak about how many fast food chains have popped up since he's been away. But Pomni says that she doesn't mind because that means that the delivery fees are cheap. And Jax just stares at her for a moment, maybe finally understanding that Pomni is also struggling in her own way, likely spending most of her free time alone in her apartment, not even been willing to go and eat at one of these little fast food joints. But soon, he's back to asking her questions about popular movies, shows, and overall just trying to figure out what he's missed since he's been gone. And Pomni picks up on the fact that it seems like she may be the first person that he's really sat down and spoken to since escaping the digital world, which is kind of concerning considering that they've been out of there for weeks now. Eventually, the pair make it to Pomni's apartment, and as they enter, Jax gets an odd look on his face, and it's really kind of hard to place. Pomni thinks that he's just letting down his guard a little bit, but it almost feels like he's not used to being inside of a home. And a couple of other things kind of stand out to me. When we look at his shoes, they are pretty beat up, and that doesn't mean that he's been walking the streets all day and night, but it could. Earlier, Pomni also noted that his hair looked like it hadn't been brushed, and he was very eager to follow Pomni home. I wouldn't be surprised if Jax doesn't have anywhere to go, and that might be because maybe his family is just gone, right? Because it has been 10 years, or maybe he just can't deal with the fact of living alone, so he just hasn't been home, just wandering around the city. And that kind of makes sense for me because Pomni kind of got lucky because she wasn't in the digital world for that long, so it was probably easier for her to reconnect with her family. Next, we see Pomni getting ready to order the pizza for them, and I love how she's able to guess what kind of pizza he would like, showcasing just how well she knows him. But as she's going to confirm the order, she ends up cutting her finger on her broken phone screen and cussing up a storm, rightfully so. In seeing this, Jax jumps up, takes her hand, and asks if she has any tweezers. And then he goes through the process of actually getting her fixed up. And I have to admit, it was interesting seeing a gentler side of Jax. And this stands out even more when Pomni points out all the scars on his hands and even on the tips of his fingers. But it's difficult to tell if those scars are from fighting or just the remnants of a hard life. Eventually, he gets her cut, cleaned, and bandaged, and then he tells her to go have a seat while he gets the bathroom cleaned up again. And while Pomni wonders why she's letting him tell her what to do in her own home, he isn't really being demanding, but rather he's acting like kind of a caregiver in a way. In the final few panels, we see Jax join her on the couch and start to remark about how Pomni kind of looks like her digital self in a way, while Pomni finally gets a good look at Jax. And she finds herself not only liking his style, but finding him to be attractive. And this makes me wonder if this AU is going to have them as a couple at some point. We know that the fandom definitely ships them a ton. I think they call it Funny Bunny, so I wouldn't be surprised. Unfortunately though, this is where the comic ends for now, but I know that the writer of the fanfiction is up to chapter 16 or so. So with that, I'm hoping we'll get more panels soon. I have to admit that this AU is very well done. The artwork is superb and the story thus far is really engaging. I hope we get to see more of the crew enter the storyline, and based on the fact that the creator has artwork for each of the characters, I think that's a real possibility. While the characters don't look the way that I imagine them in my head, I do love the designs. Here is a close-up of Ragatha, and I do like her design. I like how the author said that she kind of looks like a horse girl, and I can definitely see that. We then get a closer look of Gangle and Zoobles, and I really like Zoobles' design. I like how they made them look very much like goth, or I guess maybe alternative is probably a better description of them. And Gangle looks pretty much the way that I expected her to look, if I'm being honest. All in all, this was a pleasure to read, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Let me know what you guys thought of this AU down below. Sub today, become a member of the Orseofkorse, and make sure to go check out the creators page for yourself. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on another one. Peace, peace.